Belial, Behemoth, Lucifer, Satan, the devil walks amongst us. Or does he? We're going to have a serious talk about both the idea of Satan and the spiritual oogie boogie of Satan, but mostly about the idea of Satan, because people take this idea way too seriously and not seriously enough, like most spiritual topics. Let's talk about it as we enter spooky season and walk together down creation's paths. Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie. I am a Christo-pagan druid and priest of Bridget.
Hello, I am Brian. I'm a Christo-pagan druid and sous chef to the Dalda.
Today, we're going to be talking about Satan. I hope you didn't just click off when you saw that that's the topic. I think this is a fascinating discussion. It has a lot to do with how do we view good and evil. It has a lot to do with how do we view the nature of reality. And we'll get to that one when we get to the fact that, did you know we've auditioned Satan over the history of the idea? Yeah, there's been a lot of people that maybe this one. And so we're going to talk about that all today. But before we do, if you haven't already, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, whatever the wording is on the app that you're listening to us on. We do original Christo-pagan and druidic content every day, Monday through Friday, on this podcast, and you don't want to miss anything, especially because it's spooky season. Samhain is coming up, and we've got a lot of both spooky and Samhain-related episodes coming up. Hopefully you will enjoy.
I'm laughing very hard right now because you created a funny image in my head. So imagine the painting, The Last Supper, Jesus and all the apostles, except for now, instead of at a supper table, it's a casting call table. And various Satans are walking in the room, like, trying to audition. One walks in, kind of dressed, kind of emo-like, and it's just like, hi, I'm Satan. I don't even understand what I'm doing here today. And then, like, applause just breaks out, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, this dude's, like, spot on. Like, it's a very hilarious image in my head. Scene, I guess you could say.
So, that's not very off from what actually happened in history. So, as I like to remind people, all of our traditions have changed over time. Unfortunately, we can't say a lot about early Israelite religion because they either didn't write anything down or we lost whatever they wrote down. I think the oldest manuscripts we have go back to maybe 100 to 300 years around the turn of the era. So BCE, CE. And we don't have much that goes back further as far as like manuscripts. We know those manuscripts were edited several times in their history, which we can see from the language that's used in them and other context clues within the texts themselves. The closest we can get is the Ugaritic texts that were found. Those tell us more about Canaanite religion than they do about Israelite religion. There probably was a lot of similarities. They spoke similar languages to each other. Their high god was named El. He was called the Yahweh of his people. There's a lot of similarities there, so we can glean from that and context clues that remain in Scripture what early Israelite religion looked like, but we're really at a loss because a lot of that got removed as Israelite religion moved towards Judaism and went from being henotheistic with one supreme God ruling a council of many gods to there's just one God, which, as we've talked about in previous episodes, was a long process. One of the members of this divine council was called Satan, the Satan, literally the adversary or the accuser. It's literally what the word means. This was either a title or a name, we do not know. The oldest evidence we have of this character is preserved in the Book of Job. Job probably preserves some of the oldest Israelite stories because there doesn't seem to be an attempt there to get rid of El fighting the sea dragons, which is something that is missing in most of the rest of Scripture. But yeah. God shows up and says, I fought the sea dragons, where were you? Can you pull the sea dragons out of the sea? So those older stories are still there, so that gives a sense that it wasn't as edited, at least, as other books in the Scripture. This Satan we know very little about, other than this title, the Accuser or the Adversary, which, by the way, in the rest of the Hebrew scriptures is a term applied to people, as in our adversary, the person we're fighting against, striving against, the person who's making accusations in the court of law. It is a term of art, and not so much like today when we hear the word Satan, we think horns, pitchfork, red scaly skin, and a tail.
Broken foot.
Yeah. It's a title more than anything. And in this book, he is somebody who accuses Job before God. He's like, yeah, God's like, look at my boy Job. Job loves me. And the Satan is like, yeah, of course he loves you. You've given him everything he ever wanted in life. And if you didn't favor him so much, he wouldn't favor you so much. In fact, he would probably hate you. And God and the Satan make a bet, and God kills off all of Job's family, all of his livestock, has his house fall down and kill his children, gives him all kinds of diseases and stuff, just to see what would happen. Because, the God in Job is a special case story. Maybe we can talk more about Job's God on a future episode. I don't want to get sidetracked. But this Satan is a figure that is an accuser, and is much like the first Satan that we have archaeological evidence on. So as we were talking the other day about how eventually we have this apocalyptic tradition starting, and I mentioned the Book of Jubilees. The Book of Jubilees introduces us to our first Satan, Mastema. Mastema is a very interesting character. He is actually referred to as the Satan in this book. He's not a fallen angel. None of that part of the story is here yet. The angels have fallen in the story, so there are fallen angels around. This Mastema is one of the Nephilim. So the angels fell, they had children with humans. Mastema is one of those fallen angels, one of those children of the fallen angels. And he is a very interesting character in that when God decides to destroy all of the Nephilim, which is traditionally what happened at the flood. The flood didn't happen because of people's immorality. They happened because this half-breed race of angels and men was roaming the world, doing all manner of mischief. And so the floods had to come to wipe them out. Mastema argues with God. This is the first argument we see Mastema have in the book, and says, no, that would be unjust of you to wipe out an entire race of beings because you don't like them. Mastema actually argues against genocide, and is right. Mastema's arguments that he makes against God is basically, if you wipe us all out, you are sinning, and you are no longer a good God. And God says, okay, well, I see your argument, and I raise you, how about we put some of the Nephilim on the boat with Noah, and I flood the earth anyway, because all those fallen angels need to be off the planet. They can't be walking around no more. Why God couldn't just doink them out? Not part of the story. Mastema doesn't argue that point. Not part of the story. I think it should be. But they agree. Some of the Nephilim are allowed onto the ark. The world is flooded. The fallen angels are killed, as are a lot of other things. But the race of the Nephilim survive. They are deep. Jewish demonology, which is a whole subject we should do a video on in future, is very different from Christian demonology. None of the words for demon that we would associate with demons is used for them, and they run around doing their thing. Mastema, on the other hand, is still called the Satan, and comes back ever so often, and is like, God, your people over there, they're not worshiping you right. Maybe you should punish them. Your people over there are getting too high and mighty. Maybe you should send a plague. This Mastema is the closest of the Satans that we have to the one we see in Job. He shows up periodically. Did you see what Susie's doing over there? He's the tattletale.
It's like youngest sibling syndrome. Mm-hmm. They got in trouble, and now they're going to be darn sure to hold the rest of the family to that same standard. No leniency.
And he does. He's an interesting character, and I think closest to the Satan of the Book of Job. I also feel like he is closer to the Satan that we see in Milton in character. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven kind of a character. The next Satan that comes along is the Satan named Balak. We don't know much about this. We really don't. The few stories that we have about him, he was created that way. He is not a fallen angel. There's no recorded story of this Satan's fall. Jesus calls him the father of lies by name. He actually calls him out in the Gospels. And he's kind of that's all we really know about it. Other than the fact that Jesus calls him a deceiver and that he is seen as kind of an Angmayu type character. If you're familiar with Zoroastrian religion, he is the leader of the evil army. He seems probably to have been inspired by Angmayu and this idea of that there's a good guy and a bad guy, and he's the bad guy.
I feel like at this point I should step in, probably for some of the listeners there, going, wait a minute, we're going through this chronology of Satan here, but you didn't talk about Satan in the Genesis.
There is no Satan in Genesis. Satan doesn't appear in the Book of Genesis.
I feel like I should have gone, what?
He doesn't. It's not until the Christians, many, many, many centuries later, and it's actually centuries into Christianity, that the idea comes up that the serpent is Satan or the devil, or the idea that Satan and the devil are the same being.
So that actually gets to be inserted in later in the chronology.
Yeah.
I just wanted to insert that real quick because I thought there would be some people getting distracted with this question and concern at this point, and I thought it might help ease their mind. We're going to come back around to it.
That Satan is probably some mashup between Belial, who I tend to think is kind of what happened when the word Baal went on a walkabout in the captivity and then came back mixed with some of the ideas that they found in Zoroastrianism. He was the great and evil, bad guy, right?
Yeah.
In the story prior to the Babylonian captivity. My feeling is, and this is just a feeling, that Baal transformed into this other character, but I have no evidence for that. The next one, and he may actually originate at roughly the same time as Mastema did, is Samael. Samael, in my opinion, is the Samyaza that we see in the Book of Enoch. If you've never read the Book of Enoch, it is a trip. All three books are phenomenal reads and would make epic movies. Samyaza is the first fallen angel, devil, Satan character that we have. Samyaza is the one who leads the revolt that brings about the Nephilim. He looks down and goes, human women very purty. I would like me a human woman wife. And a group of angels, whose job, by the way, is to watch what people are doing and tattle on them when they do bad things, decide to revolt. They come down on Mount Hermon, which is currently in the Golan Heights, and there they teach all manner of evil to mankind, like we were saying the other day, TikTok advice, how to do makeup, how to make war, how to make weapons, how to cook with too many spices. Like literally, it's,
hey, spicy food is nice. I've been accused of making food of temperature that only Satan could appreciate.
The Book of Enoch lists all of the evil that they taught and which one of the fallen angels taught what thing. And, that list is amazing to read. This Samyaza, I believe, evolved into Samael. Could be different mythological traits to get there, but Samael is the poison of God. Samael, in Jewish mysticism, will go on to be the father of demons. He and his wife, Nama, not Lilith, Nama, who is also an angel, by the way, a fallen angel, they give birth to all of the demons. All of the demons that exist, according to that version of the story, are their offspring. He is an angry, evil monster. He is here to destroy. He's all of the things that you think of when you think devil. He's there to corrupt, to destroy. His name literally, Samael, means the poison of God. We don't have much of his origin story. We don't know why he fell, other than if he is the same as Samyaza, is because he wanted a wife, a human wife. But if they're different characters, we don't know exactly why he fell. The most common version of that story that I've seen is speculation that his sense of moral outrage that humans were allowed to get away with doing bad things led him to decide that the human race had to be destroyed. That's a take. But we don't know, again, much about his origin story. The one that y'all are probably familiar with, we don't get till about the 7th or 8th century of the Common Era. And that's Lucifer. You see, there is a passage in the prophet Ezekiel where he is really, really mad at the king of Tyre. And God is casting a curse on the king of Tyre. In this curse begins, "How have you fallen from heaven, O morning star?" Now, morning star is a term that was used for somebody who was great and who led their people. Jesus, in fact, in the Gospels and in the letters of the apostles, is referred to as the morning star. That's what that word meant. This was a great leader who has fallen. That's all that story originally meant. So in the early medieval period, the monks sat around and went, fallen angel, fallen star. Wait, in the Book of Revelation, it compares demons to stars. There's a great dragon in heaven who sweeps his tail through the heavens, and a third of the stars fall. Wait, so if the demon is the devil and the tail makes the demons, and the demons are called stars, then the morning star, do you have your murder board up? This is one of those, you got to set your murder board up. Since the demons are the stars, then the morning star, the leader of the stars, that has to be the devil. Okay, well, in Greek and in Latin, this term is put in the scripture as Lucifer, light bearer. It's literally the planet Venus. But this light bearer, how are you fallen from heaven, O light bearer, morning star? Yeah. Now we have a name for this new demon, and his name is Lucifer. And he fell from heaven because he thought, oh, what a good boy am I. I will set my throne above all thrones, all that. That was about a literal human being who was king of Tyre.
He's long dead.
He's long dead. But these monks decided, oh, that was also about the devil.
Like, if the king of Tyre were still around, it'd be a little bit different conversation right now. Maybe not one at all, because if they're still around, I probably wouldn't want to upset them. But, yeah, long dead.
Now, the reason I went through all of these stories, the longest intro to any podcast we've ever done, is you need to understand, when we talk about Satan, you really have to ask yourself which ones. You see, I was involved in a lot of high magic for a long time, and according to the medieval grimoires, there are actually 7 Satans, and they each have names, and they each have things that they're in charge of. There's not one, there's 7 according to them. This idea is not fixed. It is a loose mythological point that gets placed wherever it needs to get placed. By the time you get to Milton thought he was writing a pro-monarchist screed when he shows, oh, the most awful person would obviously be an anti-monarchist. So Satan must have been an anti-monarchist and said a lot of bad things about the monarchy. And then you have people reading Paradise Lost and going, the Satan doesn't seem that bad. Because, yeah, maybe monarchy bad? If you want to read the greatest Tumblr post ever written, like angry Tumblr screed calling somebody out ever written, read Milton by William Blake. It is a letter from Satan to Milton thanking him for the good PR. Nothing I have ever done has been greater than when you accidentally stumbled upon this inspiration. You've helped me out so much. It's a great book. But that's the thing. This idea of Satan has never really been locked down. It has changed every couple hundred years throughout history. I could go through, if we had the time, through how it changed throughout medieval Europe, both in Judaism and Christianity, to the point we are today. If you want to go through this long history, and I believe she includes everything we talked about and a lot more. I can't remember if she mentions Mastema in the book, because her focus tends to be more on the Christian side of theology than the Jewish side. But Elaine Pagels wrote a wonderful book called The Origin of Satan that will take you through the entire elaborated story with who changed the story here, there, and yonder, and for what reason. And we are constantly doing this. The idea of the horns and the pitchfork and tail, that was inspired by one painter in the Middle Ages. One painter decided to do that in about the 1300s, and a few other painters were like, that's interesting, and copied him. And thus our devil now has horns, carries a pitchfork in his tail, and is red. And in fact, I think that's the funniest one, because in the original painting, he's not red. He's actually golden colored. But,
it's cheaper to paint with red than gold.
Probably. The devil is such an interesting character because he is more a reflection of the society that talks about him than he is an actual being. There is no consistency to the stories. I grew up in the Satanic Panic in the 80s. The Satan of my youth was all of the societal problems of the day. Satan will tell you to do drugs, to have sex out of wedlock, maybe to be homosexual. That was the Satan of my youth. And that is the Satan you don't find prior to that. And it's the Satan that, in a way, kind of went away. But there was this blip in the time where that was the Satan. He's inspiring heavy metal music to make more people do drugs. Okay. You do you, Satan.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to diss the idea that there is evil in the world. There is evil in the world. I do not think that we can, if we're going to be consistent in our mythos and in our lore as we're reconstructing here, to say that there is a Satan. At best, I think we could maybe agree with the medieval grimoires that maybe there are 7. They included people in there that I don't think belong on the list, like Ashmedai, Asmodeus, feels about Asmodeus.
I want to get into some magic math for a minute and advocate for 6, not 7, because if we're talking about Satan or the devil, it should be 6. But that's magic math, and
Perfect evil, though. So that's why it's 7.
mm,
The perfection of evil is the 7 Satans, yeah.
I still don't agree with that.
I'm just saying that's the argument that's
I don't want to devolve our conversation into magic math either.
But that's why I just wanted to introduce people, because I don't think that people realize how fraught this topic is, because we tend to believe that everything is as it is now as it always was, and that these stories are just evolving. Maybe there is not a consistent through line. Satan is Mastema the devil? Is the devil and Satan even the same character?
Yeah, because a lot of the conversations I have nowadays are debates over them being different, being separate, where you have this more through line of the accuser side and the through line of the evil for just destroy everything, burn it all down side. When you look at it more in terms of energies and intentions, you have more of those darker intentions of just destruction for destruction's sake. And you have more of those, I guess you could say, grayer intentions of just questioning.
I tend to believe that there are good spirits and bad spirits. But for the most part, to me, as we like to say, that God is the energy behind everything. God is the one in whom we live, move, and have our being. God is a process. Most spirits, to me, are little loops in that process. They're little bits of energy that have started doing a particular thing. I think demons arise and fall. I agree with Rabbi David Cooper, who said, when you stump your toe, did the demon make you do that? Yes, because all of the energy in that moment conspired just right to create a demon that stubbed your toe, and then that demon disappeared, never to come back. It blinked into existence, you stubbed your toe, and then you moved on. That most demons are these kind of intermittent blips. That makes some sense to me. In as far as they're momentary, they can be fed. I think, like we've said on earlier episodes, anti-Semitism, racism, homophobia, misogyny, transphobia, all of those things are demons, but they are constantly fed and kept alive by people practicing and believing in them. I don't personally believe that there is a separate being for those. We can get really deep into the weeds of esotericism here and say maybe an egregore or a thought form has been created, but I don't believe that there is I'm going to use a big philosophical word, and I'm sorry. I do not believe in an ontological devil.
There you go. Ontological.
Ontology is the study of being. By saying what I said, to try to say that in more words, I do not believe that a devil or demons is intrinsic to the nature of the universe. I don't believe there has to be evil. I believe the evil just arises. It can arise.
For me, a lot of that goes back to that metaphor and imagery of light and light shining forward. There doesn't have to be shadow and darkness. You can have just a room of light. The thing is, the minute it starts getting blocked and obstructed, that's when the shadows start to come out.
One of my favorite strains of Jewish mysticism that I've built my life on is the idea that this universe is the Zel Shaddai. It is the shadow of God, shadow of the Almighty, that God dances before God's own light, and the shadows cast by God dancing before God is what we experience as the world, which is why we occasionally get glimpses of this twinkling light through everything. Beautiful image. I did a whole video about it over on the YouTube channel, Creation's Past. You can check it out over there if you want to dig into that a little bit further. I think the idea of Satan is a useful tool. I do not believe in an ontological devil, that a devil was created from the beginning. We can talk about the possibility of fallen angels. I think there always will be a spirit of accusation out there. When you actually look into the stories of Satan, Satan's not always the bad guy. Like I said, in the very first historically timed story, we can root in time and space and say this is when the story was probably written. The Satan that we meet, Mastema, argues with God that genocide is bad, that you should not do a genocide. I can't disagree with that. I can disagree with some of the other things that he said in that book. Not saying like Mastema is my hero or anything, but I think there is always a place for that accuser. So the role, like we have christened in our time of the devil's advocate, somebody who needs to be speaking out for those who are not being spoken for, or at least giving the contrary point of view so that all perspectives are being taken in so that we don't fall into bias and whatnot. I think that's important. I think every one of us should have that kind of skeptical Satan as part of our thought process that's always going, yeah, that sounds great, but just to keep ourselves on our toes and keep us from falling into confirmation bias and the rest. Now, On that level of, do I believe that there is no devil in the universe? I know I like to talk about my spiritual experiences, and I've had experiences of angels and archangels and whatnot through my magical practice. I have encountered an entity that I would say is the devil. I will not say his name. I will not even tell you where I came across that name, though it is not as hard to find as you might think. There are YouTube videos where they say his name and chant his name, and it upsets me. I do believe that there are evil entities that do exist. I have encountered one. Now, I think that's really important to say. In all of my years of practicing magic and mysticism, I've encountered one spirit that I would say is truly evil. And I have performed exorcisms. And most of those exorcisms are unclean spirits,
Yeah,
not evil spirits. And we should do an episode on that.
definitely do an episode on that.
They're different.
Very different.
In brief, unclean spirits are basically spiritual embodiments of trauma or pain that latch on to a person and will not let them go. It's literally being haunted by your past. That's a very different thing, and that's something we can talk about in the future, because I want to keep this on Satan. Phrase I never thought I would say on a religious podcast, but here we are. Oh, but yeah, the devil's complicated, like everything. When anyone tries to simplify Satan down, laugh at them, you need to point them at this episode, at the book Elaine Pagels did. Justin Sledge on the YouTube channel Esoterica has done several episodes on this topic. I don't always agree with everything that they talk about. Gnostic Hermeticist has also done several episodes on this topic with reading some source material in there. Some interesting places to go if you want to dig down on this one, especially as we're getting into spooky season. The idea of Satan and the devil is something I don't take all too seriously, though I do believe there is a big bad evil spirit out there. I just don't think most people will ever have to encounter it. Happy spooky season. I hope you have enjoyed this episode. If you did, let me know down in the comments. What do you think the devil is? Do you even think that there is a devil? What do you think about the literary tradition of the devil? Have you read Paradise Lost? What's your feelings about him? If you haven't, if I can make one recommendation before we go, Ian McDermott, who plays Emperor Palpatine in Star Wars, did an audiobook version of Paradise Lost. If you want to have a very fun experience with that book, I highly recommend it. I highly recommend it. It is a good audiobook because he goes into like full Palpatine mode every time he talks from the point of view of Lucifer. And I have to say, if you did not know that you needed Darth Lucifer in your life, you need Darth Lucifer in your life. It such a good audiobook.
Is the devil in the details?
Always. Yeah, we should definitely do an episode on demonology because that's an even more complicated subject than this. But anywho, let us know in the comments if you're listening to it, what you think about the devil and the rest. You can, if you're listening to us on YouTube or Spotify, you can leave a comment right there. They'll let us know. We'll be able to respond to you. If you're listening anywhere else, you can leave a comment there, but they will not let us know. So please take that comment and go over to creationsfast.com/chat, or just click on the chat and you will be able to leave a comment there and we will get a notification. We can have a conversation with you. Would love to know your thoughts, especially on this one. I think this one's going to have a lot of I don't believe in the devil comments on it. Personal opinion. I think that's probably what this is going to be. If I'm wrong, I can't wait to see what you have said. While you're there, if you have a few dollars you can cast our way, you can help support us like a couple of you already are. And thank you so much for that. You can join and become a member over at creationsfast.com, or you can support us on Ko-fi or Patreon. I am C.E. Dorset on both, and that goes to support everything that I do, from my writing to my music to these podcasts and everything. Helps us to keep food on our table, the back we're on, and the roof over our heads. So thank you to everybody who does that. We're hoping to get to a point where we have enough coming in that we can start taking portions of it and supporting various charities and having you all help us figure out which ones that should be. But we got to get to the point where we're making ends meet first. Alrighty. Until next time, may the one life rise within you and help you to see the difference between light and darkness and discern who the Satans are in your life. Who are those accusers that maybe you probably shouldn't be spending as much time with because they're taking you down. Amen.
Amen.